In the opening scene of the movie, the Osage tribe is burying a peace pipe and grieving the arrival of white settlers and the potential displacement of their descendants. Shortly after, an oil deposit discovery makes the Osage extremely wealthy, attracting outsiders eager to share in their fortune. Ernest Burkhart returns to Oklahoma after World War I to visit his wealthy uncle William King Hale, who created his wealth through businesses and his position as a reserve deputy sheriff. He is regarded by the Osage people as the king of the Osage and as a well-liked white man. Hale gives his nephew a place to stay next to Byron, Ernest's brother, and gives him a book to read about Osage history. In a flashback, the film shows a few of the Osage people murdered without investigation. Ages 23, John Whitehair, 29, Bill Stepson, and 41, Anna Sanford, all killed without investigation. Young Osage are murdered, making it look like suicide. The criminals work for Hale, who wants to take control of the Osage wealth. The discovery of oil in their land has made the Osage Nation extremely wealthy. Although they receive the oil money as Native Americans, they are obligated to have a guardian to manage their finances. Mollie Kyle meets with her guardian, Mr. Beatty, to ask for money to pay for a medical operation and other medical bills to treat diabetes. Although it's her money, he asks for details before approving her request. The Osage guardians were white businessmen. They restricted the Osage access to funds and were often married to the Osage to legally steal their land and oil profits. Ernest, working as a taxi driver, meets Mollie, takes her to church to pray for her sick mother. Over supper, Hale talks to him about Mollie, asks him to get close to the Osage to get his share of the oil profits. If he marries Mollie, he can inherit the wealth when her family dies. Hale calls it an investment. Ernest tries to get closer to Mollie on their rides and starts reading about Osage history. At night, he joins other men to rob money from the Osage to use it for gambling. Mollie offers him a new hat, asks him to stay for dinner. Her mom, Lizzie, looks weak from diabetes. The next day, Mollie is out with her sisters, Anna Brown, Rita, Minnie, and her husband, Bill. Rita doesn't look well, but they all notice Ernest's interest in Mollie. That night, they start kissing, and Ernest tells his uncle that he wants to marry her. The day finally comes. Ernest and Mollie are getting married. Hale makes a speech. Everyone is celebrating, and Hale notices Minnie, Mollie's sister, is sad. He asks her if everything is all right, and if she's taking her medicine, but she later dies from the wasting disease that some Osage have. Hale tells Ernest that Bill neglected his wife Minnie to inherit her wealth. Mollie, her sisters, and her sick mother Lizzie will all lose their riches to him. He reminds Ernest that he has to put in the effort to get Mollie's family land and wealth. Lizzie tells Mollie at the funeral that she saw an owl fly into the room, which is known to be a death omen. Charlie Whitehorn is murdered at night and discovered dead in an oil puddle. After leaving with Byron, Anna was also discovered dead the next morning. When Mollie arrives at the crime scene, she recognizes the body and is overcome with grief. The Osage Council is assembled to discuss the killings of Charlie and Anna. They raised a cash to help with the investigation, and Mollie hires her own private investigator. The council says the white man is murdering their people to control their wealth. The council nominates Mr. McBride to travel to Washington, D.C. to meet with the Indian Affairs Commission to ask for private investigators to look into the murders. The local physician who works with Hale opens Anna's body to look for the bullet. Mollie is experiencing worsening symptoms of the wasting disease. The white doctors, the Shawn brothers, administer medication to help with her symptoms. However, she starts to suspect that anyone from outside Osage might be secretly working against her. Anna leaves $100,000 estate to her mother Lizzie and sisters Mollie and Rita. Mollie is having a self-talk about her grief, that she wants to kill all the white men responsible for her family's murders. William J. Burns, or Bill, a private investigator hired by Mollie, arrives to investigate the murders. McBride went to Washington, D.C. to meet with the Indian Affairs Commission, receives a telegraph asking him to back down, and was killed by 2 men shortly afterwards. Bill tells Mollie that he found Anna's purse at home, which suggests that Byron did indeed drop her home. Bill asks Mollie about her brother-in-law Bill Smith, who was first married to Minnie and then to Rita after Minnie died of illness. Bill Smith knows who killed Anna and plans to go public once he obtains the actual evidence. Ernest pushes Blackie to aim higher than grave robbing to become rich. He proposes a plan for Blackie to murder Bill Smith and his wife Rita, who pose a risk by knowing too much. Their deaths would transfer their estate to Lizzie, and then to Ernest, who promises to share the wealth with Blackie. Ernest instructs Blackie to kill the couple, steal Rita's diamonds, Bill's cash, and offers an extra $1,000 from Hale as a reward. Also, Ernest motivates Blackie with a scheme to steal and split the insurance money from his Buick Roadster. Blackie calls Ernest greedy Jew, and they both laugh over the plot. Ernest watches while Blackie steals his car. Mollie asks for his comfort because she worries more and more about her family's safety. The white doctors, the Shawn brothers, tell Mollie that there is a new medicine that only 1 in 5 people can afford, called insulin. They administer Mollie and warn her not to eat sweets. After Blackie steals Ernest's car, he is pursued by police. Hale retrieves the car and confronts Ernest at home. Hale, aware of Ernest's insurance scam with Blackie, is furious as Blackie's disappearance disrupts their plan to eliminate Bill and Rita. He punishes Ernest, asks him to control his wife for hiring a private investigator and sending McBride to Washington. Hale then orders Ernest and Byron to eliminate the private investigator, leading them to attack and kill him in his hotel room. Mollie's health is getting worse. She doesn't trust the white doctors, hired by Hale. Ernest gives her the insulin instead. He's mad at Mollie for refusing to take the medication, for not appreciating his uncle's support, and for suspecting that someone is trying to hurt her. Ernest starts to inject a toxin into her insulin to treat her diabetes. As Lizzie's life fades, Mollie and Rita stay by her side, with Lizzie envisioning Elder Osage guiding her to the afterlife. Lizzie's death results in the transfer of her oil wealth to Mollie and her children. At a family dinner, Ernest reveals Mollie's pregnancy, leading Hale to suspect it's a plot to secure Ernest's wealth. Concerned about potential claims from Mollie's first husband, Henry, Ernest hires John to befriend and then murder Henry, resulting in a poorly executed assassination by a shot in the back of the head. Obviously murder, not suicide, which frustrates Hale. Ernest then asks John to meet A.C. Kirby, who is an explosives expert, to take care of Rita and Bill. Their house explodes, waking Ernest and Mollie. Ernest finds Rita dead and Bill severely injured, begging to be killed. Mollie wails in grief. Hale arrives from his trip. He wanted an alibi for the explosion. Mollie, with the last of her strength, asks her guardian for money to go to Washington. Accompanied by Osage leaders, she begs President Calvin Coolidge to investigate the unresolved murders in their community. Back home, Ernest, now fully under his uncle's influence, agrees with all of Hale's demands. He continues to poison Mollie with the insulin injections, worsening her health. She's now suffering hallucinations after seeing the same owl that her mother Lizzie saw. Agents from the Bureau of Investigation, later known as the FBI, led by Tom White, come to the county to begin looking into the murders. Tom White introduces himself to Ernest and asks to speak to Mollie, but Ernest declines. The Bureau interrogates the Shun brothers about Anna's missing death records. Tom White meets Hale, who pretends ignorance about the murders. Hale begins eliminating his men, including John, to cover his tracks. He also orchestrates A.C. Kirby's murder in a staged store break-in. Tom White meets with the Bureau officials and tells them about his meeting with Alvin Reynolds, who opens up about the Osage murders. They arrest Kelsey and make a deal to share what he knows about Byron and Ernest's involvement in the murders. The Bureau arrests Ernest, asks about Rita, Bill, and Anna's murders. He denies any knowledge and later sits alone with Blackie, who tells him that he told everything to the Bureau. Almost dead, the Bureau takes Mollie to the hospital for medical help. The Bureau hides Ernest for his protection from Hale, which turns himself in to appear innocent. Everything starts to fall into place when Blackie confesses that Hale and Ernest are behind the Rita and Bill Smith murders, and that later, Hale also asked him to kill his nephew, Ernest. It's court day. Ernest walks into the witness stand, and Hale's attorney, Mr. Hamilton, demands that he speak to Ernest in private before he can testify, causing a huge unrest in the courtroom, which forces the judge to reschedule the hearing. Ernest meets with Hamilton and the family, who threatens Ernest and asks him to cover up his uncle's role in the murders. Hamilton asks him to lie, to say he was beaten and tortured by the Bureau to give false testimony. Kelsey, on the witness stand, confesses that he and Byron got Anna drunk, took her to the canyon, and Byron held her up while Kelsey shot her dead. White informs Ernest that his infant daughter Anna died. Devastated, Ernest tells Hale that he will testify, as the Bureau made a deal with him. Hale threatens him, but Ernest is determined this time to set things right. Ernest takes the stand and testifies to Hale's role in Henry's murder, in Rita and Bill's house explosion, and his plan to kill Mollie's family one by one, which would transfer the oil wealth to Ernest and then to his uncle. Ernest says he loves his wife, and she later meets him in private. She asks him about the toxin he gave her. He says, "It was insulin," and she leaves. A radio show recaps the movie's events and updates on the people's fates. The Shun doctors were not convicted due to insufficient evidence. Hale is sentenced to life in prison, but he and Byron are later paroled under the condition Hale never returns to Oklahoma. Despite this, there are rumors he was seen in the state until his death at 87. Kelsey Morrison faces charges for Anna's murder. Ernest was sentenced to life in prison, but later released by a governor, and he died in the 80s after living with his brother Byron in a trailer park. Mollie divorces Ernest, remarries John Cobb, and dies from diabetes at age 50, buried alongside her family. Martin Scorsese, the movie director, appears briefly to read Mollie's obituary, with no mention of the murders. The Osage face further challenges when the government takes over their trust lands. They file a class action lawsuit in 2000, alleging mismanagement of their assets. In 2011, They achieve a historic $380 million settlement with the government, the largest ever with a Native American tribe.